Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Nap Bros podcast. I am honored that you are here. Unfortunately, it is only half of the partnership because my brother, it was my fault. I ended up not, I forgot to record with him at a certain time, and he has other responsibilities, namely children and wife, and I currently don't. So, yeah. In honor of him, I am wearing his shirt that I stole from him, and he can't have it back. But also, I'm not a dad, and but also this is a very comfortable shirt because it is getting warm in the particular part that I am in. But welcome back to our continued conversation about sovereignty. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about chapter 15, which is conviction. And Lord willing, we will just knock this out in one fell swoop, and we will see how it goes. In this chapter, the discussion is on conviction, and Michler talks through the fact that you can be convicted without voicing it or being rude or putting down others. You don't actually have, it's not just about having a belief, but it's actually being able to execute that without being weighed down by the judgment of others or others' opinions, and without feeling like you have to match up to their particular standard. But I have to be mindful of this, and I have to say this. It's not necessarily saying that you are going to ignore other people and that you're not paying attention to other people's opinions. It's more along the lines of kind of like not just trying to keep up with the Joneses and not just, not taking in every opinion and feeling like every opinion matters. There are certain ones that do matter, and we'll get to that in a bit. It's this idea of a man being able to walk into a room and people notice. It's not, it's not just charisma, but it's also this idea of knowing who you are deep down inside, having a set of values or having a set of what you are pursuing and being confident in that. And it's not necessarily a guy having to come into a room and try and prove that he's right or trying to prove that he's the best. But it's also that he doesn't give in to others' ideas because that would be kind of a way to be deceitful towards himself. So basically, in short, it's the idea that do you have the huevos to be the man that you're meant to be? So, first thing he presents is that you will be judged. And it's kind of like good thing that, and it's a really interesting thing, this whole idea of conviction, because it's sandwiched between integrity, which is what we talked about last week, and self-awareness, which is what we're going to be talking about next week. Because having the integrity, so he's not saying that you're not going to make mistakes. He's not saying that you're not going to screw up, in this idea of conviction. And he's also not saying like you're the best and you're always right, because obviously integrity shows that you will make mistakes and you will mess up. You just have to own up to that. So, and then the idea of self-awareness is this idea of knowing who you are. And so it's kind of interesting that it's wedged in between these two bookends, basically. He quotes Robert Quellen and he says, too many people spend money they haven't earned to buy things they don't want to impress people they don't like. Let me slow that down for you. Too many people spend money they haven't earned to buy things they don't want to impress people that they don't like. Now, in all honesty, this is a very I've listened to Gary Vaynerchuk for many years, and one of the things that he also presents is this idea that we like to either try and pretend to be something that we're not. And this definitely falls into that idea of conviction. We try to pretend to be that that entrepreneur because it's the new cool thing. We try to pretend that we are business owners, or we want to say that we're a business owner because that's the new hit thing. And so we'll go out and we'll probably buy things that make it look like we're a business owner, or we'll probably go and pay for subscriptions to our YouTube channels, or influence, or Instagrams or Facebooks to get more, to show that we are an influencer. And the actual truth of it is that it's not really doing anything good for us. It's actually just a straight up lie to not just to us, not just to ourselves, but also to the people that happen to be following us. And so that kind of idea, um, but also along the lines of like spending money to, take pictures next to a yacht, or spending money to take picture, or to travel even though you don't have the money, to buy a watch even though you don't have the money for that watch. And it kind of gets you stuck in this perpetual cycle of needing to pay for that. So one of the things, now, me personally, I would say maybe the one place where I feel like I do this, where I buy things. I don't know if I'm trying to impress anybody. I can't really think of a time, but the question that you should ask yourself is: are there things that you're buying just to impress people? Are you trying to buy a Beamer? Are you trying to buy that Mercedes? Are you trying to buy that Maserati, that watch, those clothes to impress people? Or, and I'm not saying that buying those things inherently are what are you're just trying to impress people, but you really have to be honest with yourself. Like, that's a huge thing. You've really got to ask yourself, like, is this just to impress others? And so he talks about making decisions out of fear, and fear of the judgment that you're going to receive from others, and that we toe the line and we sacrifice who and what we believe in order to not be rejected by whomever, whether it's family, friends, husbands, wives. Well, yeah. Um, Whether we're being rejected by social media, friends, followers. Are we doing things in order to make them not reject us? And basically, in order to you want to, he presents that you want to combat these with two different thoughts. That, again, he wants to combat this idea that you are going to be judged, but you have these two different thoughts. Number one, rejection is not life threatening. Whether you're asking a girl on a date, whether your view count is 20 people on YouTube, or your subscribers are 6 people on YouTube, or anything along those lines, rejection isn't life threatening. And the second part is that you have to have a healthy confidence in yourself. It's not an overbearing and arrogant confidence in yourself. You have to have this healthy confidence in yourself, knowing that you are doing what it is that you should be doing. You can't please everyone. Then it goes into this idea of confidence, and so talking about being confident in yourself, and how to do that. And so the question that he or the statement that he presents is: confidence is earned. And the question is, like, to yourself, like, do you agree with that or do you disagree? Now, Michler doesn't really care if you agree or disagree. He says you have to earn it. He says that today more and more men lack confidence. We see other things or we see others, and we think that they're just born with confidence. But Michler says you've got to bleed, you've got to sweat, and you've got to have tears in order to get there. Now, again, making sure that we're not getting down this line of like, okay, yeah, you actually got to go out there and, like, try and hurt yourself in order to be more confident in yourself. That's not what we're talking about. It's just this idea of blood, sweat, and tears. When we use that adage, of that language of you've got to work for it. It's not going to come to you just willy nilly and no issues, no problems. You're just done. So he says that you've many times people will see confidence, and they'll think that it's excessive pride or arrogance, or we'll see it even as men. We'll see other men that have excessive pride and arrogance, or we'll see that as being what conviction is or what confidence is. But it's actually fostered from years of pain and discomfort working to gain that confidence. Now, he presents these questions. He presents some questions that are really fascinating. It's like he'll have people say, like, how do I get more confident talking to women? And his biggest thing is, you got to do it. You got to go out and talk to women. How do I get more comfortable asking for a promotion? He's like, you got to do it. Practice it. Pretty much anything that you lack confidence in, you've got to go out there and you've got to do it. Because the biggest thing, and I can say this for myself, the first time I got up in front of a group of students, like before teaching, it was very easy for me to get up in front of a group of people and just talk. Very easy, not an issue. And I'm sure that I built that confidence for years before that. I can't point out certain areas of it. But and even gaining the confidence of being able to go up to anybody and just kind of like talk to them and just immediately start a conversation. Again, that is a confidence that I have. I wouldn't say that I had it naturally. I would say that I fostered it, but I can't go through specific ways to explain that because it's been 15, 20 years of doing it, 30 years of doing it. And so maybe not 30, but like 25 years of doing it. But I can tell you the first time I ever got in front of a group of students, a group of Chinese students here in China, and got up in front of them and started teaching them, I was nervous as all get out. I didn't have a lick of confidence. Fast forward 7 years, and through many trials and errors and many ups and downs, even to this day, I still like. It's not that I lack confidence being in front of them and teaching them. What it is now I can hone the craft a little bit more. I'm confident in the fact that I can actually give a lesson, and then I can go back and take a look at that lesson and be like, was this good? Was it bad? What do I need to change? And so keeping that in mind as a way, you've got to go out and earn it. And basically he kind of presents kind of like a Yoda-esque like list of how things grow. And so basically it's like, courage leads to action. Action leads to confidence. Confidence leads to conviction. So in that vein, you have this idea that courage ultimately gets you to conviction. But courage, you have to have the courage. And again, knowing that you're going to fail and you're going to make mistakes. Like, and understanding that you're going to be judged and understanding you're going to be rejected, but that it's not the end of the world when you are rejected, either for a promotion or a date or a job or anything. Understanding that that is a learning opportunity and you need to just continue striving to get better. So courage leads to action. Action leads to confidence. Confidence leads to conviction. Some opinions count. So he does present this idea that there are opinions out there. So at the first, he tells you that there are many opinions and you're going to be judged and that you don't really have to listen to everybody. And that's true. There are a lot of people out there who you don't have to listen to. But some opinions do count. And basically, there are some times where you can kind of do it on your own. You can try things out. You can take a leap of faith. You can do it trial by fire. You can just kind of thrust yourself into it and try it out. And one of the stories that he presents is like this idea, he presents this idea that where it would be a bad idea to do this is where, for instance, if his father grabbed him, threw him into the pool and said, "All right, son, swim. You got it." Where that's a trial by fire that like could have very devastating consequences. Now it's interesting that he brings this up because I do vividly remember my dad, and I'm pretty sure Andrew remembers this as well. But there was a time where Andrew and I didn't know how to swim, and we had gone out to I forget where it was. It's called Devil's Hole in Texas, and there's it's just basically like this like 12-foot like natural pool kind of thing. And we'd gone out there, and we'd been out there plenty of times before, but this time was different because our dad decided to buckle us up in our usual, I guess actually, maybe it wasn't that much different, but it was like maybe the first time or the second time we'd been out there, and our dad decided to buckle us up in life vests, and then he literally grabbed us by the life vest and chucked us out into the water, and was like, swim back. So to an extent, there was some trial by fire, but obviously with some buoyancy. And even then, I'm pretty sure there were times, I don't really vividly remember, but I'm pretty sure he was standing on the edge and just like, hey, roll your arms forward, like get him in front of you. Let me show you how to do this. And so basically, after the initial shock of like going underwater and then bobbing back up, once things had calmed down, it was kind of this moment of like, oh, okay, like everything's fine, like I'm gonna be okay. This is an opportunity for me to learn. But what Michler presents is that there are other times where it's actually prudent and it's very important that you actually gain wisdom from others, especially the input of people who have actually been through it, what it is that you're going through, or been through the things that you're having struggles with, or the things that you want to pursue. Talking to them, and I'll say this one thing that I definitely struggle with. Like this is a huge one for me because like I lean more towards the side of like I don't care what anybody else says. I'm good. I got it. The problem is that there's plenty of times where it would be better, it would behoove me to actually ask and to actually get the opinions of others. And so Andrew ends up bringing up that the marriage retreat where he was able to see that he's not the only one who has issues, and that everyone struggles. That there are plenty of people out there who have challenges in their marriage. And I would say, like one of the things, especially for me and my wife, when after our first year, like a pretty rocky year of marriage, we finally sat down with a couple who had experience and who had also kind of had differing ideas of certain things. And when we sat down with them and talked with them, then all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, this is how to better interact. This is how to better react to each other. This is how to better handle confrontation and handle differences of opinion. And so with that, it was really an interesting perspective. But one of the challenging things is like I know for me there are certain things where I think I've got it down pat. And again, this is maybe this is where self awareness needs to come in and kick in, and where I realize that I don't have all the answers. No matter how great I think I am, no matter how wonderful and how amazing I may be, it doesn't matter because there are always other people who can guide me in those particular, like, whatever. For instance, this podcast. Like, I may think I know everything about podcasting, but there are plenty of people out there who are better podcasters than me, and can help me and my brother make this podcast better. The question is like, am I going to ask them? Am I going to reach out to them? And I really do need to do that. Um, I think also it's pretty interesting. Like the questions that my brother presents are like, do you heed advice? And are there any people that you dismiss? Is there anyone that you will not take advice from? Period. And I think that second one is like really important because I think everybody can present something that they're better at than you. I think everyone, like, this is just kind of like my own like worldview. I think that there are anybody that you meet in your life, I think can have some can know more about something than you do. And I know it's a challenge and it's difficult, especially if you look at somebody that, like, let's say it's trying to think of just like a really off the wall example. Let's say it's somebody who's never held a job. Yeah, granted, you wouldn't go and ask them about staying in a job for an extended amount of time, but maybe there's something else that they're good at. Maybe they're good at connecting with people. Maybe they're good at talking. Maybe they're good at fixing a car. Maybe they're good at washing. Maybe they're good at whatever it may be. But sometimes we just kind of like write those people off, or those, like, if they don't fit these criteria, we just kind of write them off. And just like, even my students to an extent, like it was very early on. It was very easy for me to think that my students were actually pretty dumb just because they didn't speak English. But that didn't mean that they were dumb. It just meant that they were more brilliant in other things. English just wasn't one of them. And so being able to go and talk to them about, or being able to ask them how to say certain things in Chinese, being able to ask them about certain mathematical things, being able to ask them about kind of just philosophy or like Chinese culture, all these different things, like, because they just know that much more than I do. And so, and that's a necessary thing, like heeding that advice. I think one of the challenges I also have is sometimes with my wife, I really struggle many times with taking her advice. Not because I think that she's below me, I wouldn't say that, but it's just, again, I think that, I don't know, maybe it is that I think that she's below me in certain instances where, um let's talk about, like, trying to think, relationships, interacting with people, especially here in China. She'll present me with, like, this idea that, hey, you can't really say those things, or hey, you can't really do those things. Hey, you've got to be mindful of how you say certain things. And I just kind of like fluff it off. I'm like, whatever. But when I've actually heeded her advice and actually listened to it and internalized it and actually followed it, then it was like there was a world of difference of how to handle certain things and how to react and how to respond to people. And so with that, you've got to be very mindful of, like, who it is that you're dismissing, and whether you're actually listening to the advice of people that you should. And the other thing too is, like, I'll say this. One of the And it's interesting because again, going back to Gary Vee, but also going back to just, like, even scripture, like, asking you shall receive, seeking you'll find, knocking the door will be open. A lot of people assume, number one, that if you try and talk to somebody who's, like, maybe in your mind higher than you on, like, a social scale, or socioeconomically higher than you, and so you don't reach out to them because you feel like they are out of reach. Now, granted, to an extent, they may have nothing to do with you, they may not want to talk to you at all. But the biggest challenge is going and continuing to do that, reaching out to those people who, like, even to an extent, like this podcast. While I'm not, like, the biggest fan of Joe Rogan, he's got a large following, he's got a large podcast, like, he does well in getting advice from him. um that, or even going to Gary Vaynerchuk for, like, business advice, although I would naturally do that anyway. um but there are many different things, like reaching out, talking to these people, connecting with these people, and that's something that I struggle with. Like, even now, like, trying to work on voice acting and podcasting and acting as a whole, and American football. These are things that I love and I want to pursue, but I haven't really reached out to those people that, like thinking about it, like an owner of an NFL football team. In my mind, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to reach out to that person. Like, why would I ever do that? But it's kind of like a stupid thing to think. Like, I should be reaching out to that person. I should be trying to connect with them. And so, again, it goes back to this idea of confidence and courage. You've got to try. If you don't try, you're not going to get there. The next thing he talks about is finding your why, and this is probably a really big one. So he talks about, like, who should you be accountable to. He presents being accountable to others, and how that can be a good thing, but that sometimes those others aren't always around. They're not always going to be there, or they may not always be able to um, get ideas to you, or be able to bounce ideas off of you. You may not be able to, connect with them. And so he does say to actually become accountable to yourself, pretty much knowing your why, so that you don't have to rely on others in order to get things done. You don't have to rely on others because other people have other things that they've got to do. And he says the best way to prepare for your life is to figure out your why. So, why you're here and what your purpose is. So that way you're not stumbling upon it, but you're actually acting, you're actually pursuing ideas, and that way you can create a why to live by. You're pursuing things that excite you, or things that interest you, or things that will make you feel, again, more confident in yourself, creating more action, leading to more conviction. And so being able to kind of answer for yourself why it is you do what you do, what your purpose is. And so the mindset that he drives home, the mindset that he presents, is that a man of conviction is willing to accept the the qualified opinions of others, but ultimately makes his own choice and carves his own path. It's understanding that you can never escape other people's judgment and that everyone has an opinion. It's listening to those who would help and ignoring those who have an opinion just to have one. And this is, again, kind of pulling at it from opposite sides. Like, yes, you care about opinions, you want those opinions who would help. But also, there are going to be people out there who are going to have opinions about how you're dressed. I mean, me wearing this, being a fat guy, probably going to be judged by people. Don't care. Like, that doesn't matter to me. And so it's more about the consistency of getting these out. Ultimately, you are responsible for your actions and the choices. So make sure they're your choices. You don't want to be stuck dying on somebody else's sword. You want to die on your own sword. You want to be like, if someone's going to attack your conviction or attack your ideas, you want them to be your ideas, not somebody else's. So that leads us into the skill set. So in the skill set, the first thing he does is he says you've got to define your purpose. Like, and he presents that it's not going to be easy. This is probably going to be one of the hardest things. And it is kind of interesting because again, I know next week we'll end up talking about self-awareness, and I know that this links into it, is like finding your purpose as well as having self-awareness. But it's basically what you've got to do is it's fostered, your purpose is fostered by reflection, action, and then review of that action. And so some of the challenges that we face, or two of the biggest things that we face when trying to be convicted of something, is basically ignorance, not knowing, and fear. Those are the things that present us that prevent us from living at the highest level of conviction. So he presents some questions that would be really useful to answer. And so I'll give you those right now. Number one, what are you doing when time goes the fastest? What would you be doing with your time if money was not a concern? What are people asking your advice about? And where does your mind drift throughout the day? So I'll kind of give you my own answers on that. What are you doing when time goes the fastest? Besides watching YouTube videos, I would say pretty much anything focused around American football, movies, TV shows, even to an extent like this podcast. Like, it's very easy for me and my brother, as you know, to go and go and go, and mostly me. I'll admit that. I know my brother will be watching this back at some point in time. What would you be doing with your time if money was not a concern? Again, I think I would be doing something in American football, maybe traveling, because I just love to see different beautiful areas of the world. I would definitely, I think I would definitely be like going to movies and analyzing movies and doing that. I would even probably be acting or doing voice acting, just for the fun of it, just because I enjoy it. Singing, even to an extent, which you've never heard me sing, but trust me, I'm sure later on in this podcast we'll end up getting to that point. What are people asking your advice about? I don't think anybody asked me advice about anything. Maybe like how to speak in front of people, how to be more comfortable in front of people, how to connect with people, just kind of like random strangers that they meet on the road. Where does your mind drift throughout the day? Gosh, where does my mind not drift? Definitely to football. Definitely to, even now, like sometimes I'll drift off into like politics sometimes. Not saying that I'm like really good at it. Not saying that that's something that I want to get into, but it's one of those things that I can easily just kind of go off into. Movies, obviously, TV shows, music. Yeah, I don't really think it's really interesting because right now I'm a teacher, and if any of my students see this, it's going to be hilarious. But yeah, my mind does not drift off into teaching. Like I drift as far away from teaching as possible. I enjoy coaching American football. I enjoy teaching when people want to be taught. That's kind of the challenge. Is like my biggest difficulty with students now is they don't want to be taught. They don't care. And since they don't care, it's very difficult for me to really think about it or dream about it or I mean I definitely I guarantee you this. Like this podcast, I would do this podcast. I am doing this podcast for free. Money is not of no concern. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy kind of learning how to edit. I enjoy talking to my brother. Except today, I'm just talking to you. But I enjoy this. However, if like with teaching, if I wasn't getting paid, wouldn't do it. Would drop it. Especially the teaching that I'm doing now, working at an institution. There's no way I would do it if I wasn't getting paid. They're like, all right, Nick, we're going to take your money away. I was like, all right, I'm going to leave. Bye. Just don't care. So, yeah. What are you doing when time goes the fastest? What would you be doing with your time if money was not a concern? What are people asking your advice about? And where does your mind drift throughout the day? He says that answering these questions will help you at least get a start. At least get a start. It's not going to give you your purpose, but it's a start. And so the greater threat is not walking alone, but it's actually never doing what you were meant to do. And I think the biggest thing, especially for us, is again this idea of being judged by others. Is that we don't want to be rejected. We don't want to be by ourselves. We don't want. Again, we're social creatures. We want to be around people. But probably the thing, and so in essence, in one word, probably the greatest threat is regret for not doing the thing that you were meant to do, for not at least trying to pursue what you were meant to do. Skill set number 2, take the next first step. So after you've answered the questions and you know the why and you're working toward your purpose, now you need to focus on the next first step instead of the issues and problems. So it's not being overwhelmed by the big picture. I want this podcast to be huge. I would love to be able to reach millions of people with this podcast, but I have to take it one step at a time. And actually, one of the things that's challenging is that I haven't done that. I really need to. There are a lot of things that I could do in order to do that, and especially over the next coming couple weeks, just because A, being able to record more with my brother, B, also being able to be a little bit more free because I don't actually have to go to work. I just have to do it online. Yay, lockdown. Woo woo. But over the next couple of weeks, taking those first steps. And so not getting overwhelmed by the big picture of wanting to get to the end, but actually, and I would even interject a little bit that you need to be in love with the process of getting to the big picture. You need to enjoy the little moments along the way, because I think that we see the big picture and we get overwhelmed by it, or we see the big picture and we try to run towards it as quickly as we can, but we end up missing out on what is actually the most important, is the process of getting to that point, and the things and the battles and the blood and the sweat and the tears that you have to give up in order to get to that point. But you just have to take it one step at a time. Like, what is the next first step? And then once you figure that out, do it. If it's contacting somebody in whatever field that you love, whatever field you want to be getting into, contact that person. And then if that person doesn't work out, contact the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until you hit pay dirt. Yeah, I mean, I think that's huge stuff. If it's being an influencer, like a legitimate influencer, don't do the easy way out and go and purchase followers. Like, it takes blood, sweat, and tears. That's one of the reasons why if you buy followers and then they all of a sudden leave you, there's a reason. It's because you didn't build up that equity. You didn't build up to get to that point. You didn't do at bats. You weren't batting enough to be able to hit it out of the park. You just immediately went to hitting a home run, even though you can't hit a home run. So everybody came to see you to hit a home run, and you just failed miserably at it. That's not going to give you confidence. As Teddy Roosevelt said, do what you can, where you are, with what you have. And I'll tell you, me and my brother are doing what we can, what we are, and what we have. We have this online platform that we use to record the podcast. We're using our computer cameras, our computer microphones. We don't have any fancy equipment. Just doing what we can, where we are, with what we have. Thanks for listening. If you are listening on your podcast, please, or on your favorite podcast app, please subscribe and leave us a comment and a review. It will help to branch out and hit other people. If you are on YouTube, please subscribe, hit the like button, click the bell. That way you can be notified about when we are posting new videos. Later on, or at the end here, you'll see the sovereignty set, and you'll see our last set about, or our last video about, you'll see our, let's try this again. You'll see our sovereignty set, which has all of our videos that we've done on sovereignty so far. And you'll also see the last video where we were talking about integrity. Come back, join us next week when we are talking about self-awareness. I'm Nick. I'm here for Andrew. And as always, you have an open invitation to our conversation.